Welcome to the Fandom Outpost, your podcast for all things pop culture.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another action-packed episode of the Fandom Outpost. As always, I'm 1/3 your host. My name is Mark.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Bob. Hi everybody, welcome to the show. We have a special guest today. We have Matt Schmidt, the writer and director of the short film Mr. Sandman, with us today. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, gentlemen. How are you?
Great.
Good.
We're really happy to have you on here. And when we connected, we were all like, we got to figure out some questions. We got to watch that movie. So we got caught up on your projects, and we're pretty excited to talk about it today and get your take on all of it. So why don't you tell us a little bit of what your production company is, Acres Films, and how that kind of came to be and how you got to where we're at now, I guess.
Well, the name itself, Acres Films, is because I grew up in an apartment complex called Larchmont Acres, and I'm a sucker for nostalgia and things like that. So I just thought it would be perfect to name it Acres Films. Plus, me and my friends used to run around. We would, I guess, I wouldn't call it renting it out, but borrowing the VHS camcorders from our AV center at high school and make cheap little films on the weekends and stuff like that. So it was definitely like a nostalgia thing for us, or for me, to name it Acres Films. I started this journey because I started writing screenplays. And the screenplays, the way they're written, would require like the budgeting basically from Hollywood studios, like that level of production. I started sending my stuff out, agents, managers, studios, whatever. And I quickly learned that I wasn't getting read and rejected. I wasn't getting read because I had no representation, and every studio kind of has the same rule. We do not accept unsolicited material. So I was like, okay, there's got to be another way. So I was scrolling through Facebook. I came across an ad for a movie that someone must have bought Facebook ads for called Bad Ben. It was a found footage film. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of it. And the title said, if you like Paranormal Activity, you'll love Bad Ben. I'm like, okay, well, I like Paranormal Activity, so I'll check it out. About 5 minutes into watching the movie, he mentions the same electric company that's local to me now. So I'm like, oh, this guy's local. So I reached out to him. The movie was on Amazon Prime. I was like, dude, how did you get your movie on Amazon Prime? Now, I didn't know back then that filmmakers could just submit, and as long as you met certain criteria, they would, sure enough, post your movie. So when he walked me through the process, I was like, okay, well, you know what? I want to try that. So I did. I said, the whole goal was to kind of build and make a name for myself. Therefore, I can maybe have more access to the studio world and be able to be like, here's my screenplay, without someone saying, no, we can't accept unsolicited,
Right.
So I made one found footage film, then I made another found footage film, and then eventually it just led to, okay, I love doing found footage. It's a lot of fun, but my heart is in cinematic style, which led to Mr. Sandman being produced.
It's very interesting. When you mentioned the studio way of going, there's many horror films that are kind of doing their own thing, like a Terrifier or stuff like that. Do you find other avenues of ways to get into a major motion picture, possibly?
Well, Terrifier took the path that I'm trying to take now. Terrifier 1 started very independently. And I noticed I'm friends with a lot of independent filmmakers, mostly horror, and they always seem to use like Indiegogo campaigns to get funding to produce something. So Terrifier was produced, and then that created a huge viral following for it,
Right.
and which led to Was it? I want to say it was Bloody Disgusting, the magazine that noticed them.
Okay.
And got them in touch with a lower, somewhere between independent and studio level film production company, which gave him some backing and some money, along with another Indiegogo campaign to make Terrifier 2, and then eventually, obviously, that exploded even more, and then now we're at Terrifier 3, which obliterated the box office. So
yeah, it's amazing what happened.
That's basically the same type of goal I have. So on the few chances I've gotten to speak with Damien, I always say, hey, I'm a fan and you're a few steps ahead of where I am. So, I'm hoping to get where you are someday.
Well, it's got to be a double-edged sword. It's got to be like, that guy's doing it. I want to do that. But it's also got to be that guy did it. I can do it. So, right. I mean, it's got to be encouraging when you see stuff like that. But also at the same time, you're like, okay, I just got to keep going. I got to keep pushing. I got to keep doing stuff like that. So I would say it's a huge positive, especially you're very motivated. So just in the conversation we had before we went on the air, you clearly have a goal, which is great. That focus, I'm going to reach it. There's my end line, or maybe you don't see the end line, but you're like, I'm going
for it.
Yeah. Right. So, and I think that's great. I wish that more independent filmmakers had that kind of access, because there's just a ton of stuff out there that we're never going to get to see unless they get that break, but I think if you're motivated the way you are to keep that going, then good luck, dude. I mean, that's super encouraging. I know you'll get there. So,
God willing. God willing.
Well, and if I know Bob's got some other questions too, but I mean, if you haven't checked out his stuff, currently, I know the one that we're talking about now is streaming on TUBI.
And that's the question we all have: is how did you get that on TUBI?
And you kind of asked that about the Prime one. We're like, how did you get that on TUBI, man? So I just think, and how did you get it? Yeah, how'd you get it on there?
This is the first time I've worked with a distributor. So I worked with Film Hub for the first time on this one. So basically that's the simple answer, is they have access to streaming platforms that you can't directly submit to. And from what I heard, I believe I got an email from Film Hub about a month ago. And the way I interpreted what they were saying, it was a little bit of legal jargon. It sounds like Amazon is going to start not accepting stuff without a distributor. So they may be cutting back as well. But going back to what you said about that double-edged sword with Terrifier, I couldn't agree more. I am so, in the best way possible, jealous of the success he's had, but in a good way. I'm jealous, right. But I just wish that was me. But I without the ill will part. But
absolutely.
At the same time, I'm like, hey, you know what he did? Because I feel that Hollywood are very much copycats, and they basically say, "Oh, something's successful. Let's make 20 more just like that." Right. So I'm hoping, I'll stress that word, that with the success of Terrifier, they might start looking more at some of the independent horror film market and say, what else can we develop?
Absolutely.
Like a perfect time for that. 'Cause I thought 2024 was an awesome year for horror. I mean, there were so many good movies. I was playing around with Letterboxd and trying to make my favorites of horror of 2024. I was like 25, 30 deep. There was a lot of good movies last year, and a lot of different movies, like you say. They're not just the cookie cutter, slashers or whatever. There's
there's some unique stuff. Yeah. That's coming. Yeah. And what's the one that you guys really like? The
Late Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil. There you go. Yeah.
Those are two of my favorites.
Yeah. So, and Bob is on our channel. Bob he's the main horror guy. Like he's he does these deep dives, and we'll be like, what is that one? I've never heard of that. Or he just goes and checks it out. He's like, okay, you guys, you got to check this out because I got to recommend it, blah blah blah, things like that.
I love news. I love new ideas and new
Right.
things, that are new in the horror genre. And I know there's many subgenres, and you mentioned found footage, and that's usually like a really with companies that may not have a big budget, that seems to be a really good way to grab a hold of an audience and just like get in. Is that what kind of you were thinking at first then? When
when I spoke to the director of Bad Ben, he said, I said, what led you? One of the questions was like, how did you do this? He said, well, I worked within my capabilities. Now, and he said found footage was in my capabilities. I said, well, okay, that makes perfect sense. It's not something that requires a huge budget, and it's something that I don't want to broad stroke it and say anybody can do it, but because you still have to do it well for it to be effective. But it's something that everybody has the access to do, I should say. Basically, you can film it with an iPhone and make a found footage movie. So I think with that accessibility, found footage is a great gateway as like kind of like a starter. But also, if you're really good at it, you can make a great career out of found footage. I mean, if you look at the Hell House movies, they've knocked it out of the park. And they've stuck with just found footage as far as I've known.
See that? So you had said earlier, though, that's the thing, like about Hollywood doing all of that. Like the found footage, it's a really weird dichotomy. It's either a hit or a miss. Like
it goes back to Blair Witch, right?
You don't really don't get a gray area with found footage. Either you're really invested in it, it's got a great payoff, and everybody talks about it, or it's like, what did I just watch, so to speak, or I was confused or whatever. So the best that can happen is that somebody does one of those, and somebody in Hollywood ever sees that and says, the potential for that was there. Maybe this didn't succeed, but the potential for that is there, and then they do something else. What else you got? So you building your resume with the stuff that you're working on. Well, what else do you got? Oh, have you seen this? Oh no, I didn't see that stuff. It might be something like that. So it's funny with it's Mr. Sandman, right? Isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Right.
But with that one, that's different from found footage, even though you said, I got my start with that. So have you seen my new one stuff? No, let me check that out. Oh, okay. See, so every time you make that building block step, I think it's great that any independent can just, one of these days, man, lightning's got to strike. So that's the way I look at it for all you independent filmmakers, so to speak.
Films like Night of the Living Dead inspired all kinds of people to make movies, which inspired,
oh my God, yeah.
Halloween, which inspired, just it keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. For us in the Metro Detroit area, our poster boy is Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi, yeah.
Of course.
Right? Of course.
Yep.
And there he is, right? So
Evil Dead is the most independent movie you can get. And
right.
And it still looks good for an independent movie shot in northern Michigan. You know what I mean? So,
while we're on the found footage, I did want to touch on your prior film, which was The Challenge, which I just caught, and I know Jim, we were talking about it.
Yeah, I watched that today as well, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Thank you.
I'm kind of a sucker for that genre, so it really hit a spot with me because I was like, "Ooh, this is right up my alley," and I really enjoyed that. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into Mr. Sandman? But the Challenge, like I said, I have a little bit of the found footage in my soul, and that one kind of spoke to me a bit.
Well, The Challenge was actually part of my second film. So the first film was a feature-length found footage film called Happy Birthday, Hannah. Then came the second film, Tales of Found Footage, which is basically a creep show for found footage. It was 3 different stories in one.
Nice.
That's an awesome title too.
Thank you.
I love it.
Right.
When I released Tales of Found Footage, there basically something happened. The second and third story each had their fans and detractors. They were very divisive. The first story, The Challenge, was universally loved by everybody who saw the film. So I was like, okay, wow. Okay, well, we did at least one thing correctly. That's for sure. That was released at the end of 2019, Tales of Found Footage. Well, what happened right after that? COVID dropped. So we were kind of stuck with basically nothing to do for a while. So my friend made a suggestion. He said, everybody loves The Challenge. Why don't you, for now, just cut it out and release it as its own YouTube thing and see what happens. And when it wasn't weighted down by the other two shorts, it again just got overwhelmingly, everybody who saw it, overwhelmingly positive, much more positive than negative reaction. So that is something I entered in a bunch of film festivals on its own and stuff, and again just got very, very good feedback from. So it was something that, and I'm gonna admit that the star of The Challenge by far is the setting. That hotel makes that movie. There's just no question about it. And I'm lucky enough to be friends with the owner of, it's called the Irish Pub, with a hotel above it. And she let us film there when the hotel is not in use in the off season, which is non-summertime.
Nice.
And
You had complete access. I was wondering how you got that.
well, I walked in the first time and I was like, wow. I'm like, this is a baby Shining.
Yeah.
This is the baby Overlook Hotel. That's what this is.
Totally. Mark, you got to see it. You got to watch it.
To the walls, to the antique furniture and little trinkets on the wall. I'm like, there is no way I cannot film here. It is made to be filmed. So I came up with the idea. Internet challenges were very very popular at the time. Hashtag this challenge, hashtag that challenge. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to call it hashtag the challenge. And I'm like, what can I do with it? I'm like, well, there's 4 floors. How about you have to make it up all 4 and make it all the way back down? So
nice.
That's how the challenge came to be. And I said, obviously, it has to be teenagers because adults don't usually do these challenges. So there you go.
All right. In the challenge, just an odd question. Did someone paint the picture of the girl? The girl? Or did you just luck out?
I wish I could take credit for that. It was pure luck. We got
That's insane.
She was casted and we got on set or on location, and all of a sudden someone noticed, wow, that looks exactly like her. That's your sign. I said, write it in. I said, let's use it. It was, you know what? It's like, I hesitate to even use the word luck. It was so fortuitous for that to happen. It was just like, that film, I gotta say, I can't lie and say it was a lot of hard work. Everything came together smoothly, from production to the ideas to the way it was received. That was really it was really a perfect storm of positivity. It really was.
There are movies and found footage in particular that, well, for me, it's an image or two that just sticks with you. And that movie had that, and they had the person in the bed with the sheet, and there's just images. And I think of that even with, any movie I see, if it's something sticks with me in my head, it's like, I must really like that movie because the images are still sticking with me. So
I'm glad. Well, that's always my goal, is to leave somewhat of an impression with you so that it stays with you a little bit. I find those are the more effective movies than movies that you just watch and you say, oh, okay, that was good, and you kind of leave behind.
After that, then I guess you had mentioned you were really into the cinematic format that you really wanted to get into with Mr. Sandman. And how did that idea come up? I've heard you in some other media mention childhood fears of the dark and things like that. And we were talking before we got you on here. We all have stories about being a child in the dark basement, trying to get upstairs, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And was that pretty much your premise from your spark of idea, that how this all started?
Well, we started filming I started writing it at the end of 2020. So again, we were still in COVID. And I knew I had to film something. I started seeing these like shorts on YouTube, like Lights Out, stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, let me film something in the house. And the original idea was to be like a 2-minute quick short, something like that. But then it kept expanding. So I was like, okay, well, I knew I wanted to concentrate on the fear of the dark, because one of the first lessons I learned in screenwriting, and I'll tell you, nothing could be more true, is make it primal. Because if you make it primal, a majority of people will be able to relate to it on some level. So, I have this discussion with my friend all the time. They're like, okay, well, how come, this is popular, that popular? I said, because they hit primal chords. Then he'll come back at me and say, well, why was Star Wars popular? I said, because they hit primal chords. He's like, what are you talking about, primal chords? It's in space. It's fantastical. Mm-hmm. It's so far away from our reality. What could be primal about Star Wars? I said, unfulfilled destiny. Mm-hmm. I said, every person alive wants their life to be greater and mean more than it is. Right. So if you take that shot of Luke staring out into the sunset of the two suns, mm-hmm. Especially every kid in America, attached to that, and probably everybody else, because they want a greater destiny than what is theirs, and those are primal chords. So the fear of the dark is extremely primal, because every time we look in the dark, especially as children, we can't help but see things, hear things, imagine things. And the longer you stare in the dark, the more you see and hear. So I was like, this is kind of a no-brainer for a primal theme. But I was like, okay, well, I can't just have a kid staring in the dark for however long this movie's going to be. I have to put a legitimate threat in that dark. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, what's a good legitimate threat? There's some type of monster. Is it under the bed? Like that old cliche, or what is it? I'm like, wow, it's right in front of me. Mr. Sandman. It's associated with sleep. So I'm like, okay, here it is, Mr. Sandman. So we had a very small cast, crew, filmed it all in my house. My daughter was the lead. Mm-hmm. And it came together like that.
Mm. Matt, you know what? This is going to sound like a negative, but it's not. It's a super positive. There's a part of me that disagrees with you, because, man, some of your camera shots had me fucked up. Because there's one where her face is on this side, and it's your daughter, right? I think, and yep. She's. It's her face, but there's an open hallway, and it's all black. Your daughter could have been bleeding to death. I wasn't even paying attention to that. My heart was like, what the fuck is in the dark? I know there's something there. There wasn't, folks. But I'm like, I can't, there's that primal. I can't take my eyes off that thing. And you got about 3 or 4 shots like that in there that just had me fucked up. Cause I was like, I find, you get that leg tapping, because I'm like, all right, it's coming, something's coming. And then nothing comes, but the intensity of the buildup was so good. And I was just like, oh, man, come on, bro, come on. And then when something does happen, and again, I'm not disappointed, but I'm like, oh, okay. But my heart had already gone through its motions because I'm looking at every nook and cranny for anything to move. I'm also a sucker for it. I'm not trying to give spoilers away, folks, but the whole the white eyes kind of thing. Oh man, that image alone is so powerful to me in a horror movie. So anybody that does that, even AI generated stuff, I'm scrolling through TikTok, I'm still like, ooh, okay, keep moving. Like that's a big one. It took a lot of strength. I ain't gonna lie, a lot of strength to watch that little bit of the movie with that. And it's more extended, folks, than it really is. Like, it's just not a jump scare. And that had me fucked up even more. And I just got to say, too, before I'll get to Bob in just a sec, that whole running up the stairs thing, dude, my wife is, I hope she's not home. My wife is 30 years old and still does that. Like, we were laughing about this off camera before we did it. She still does that now. She's got to run up before me. And I'm like, I'm right here. Nothing's going on. Nope, dude, she's got to do that. Get to the bed. So this thing hit a lot of chords. I ain't going to lie to you. So strongly recommended for folks you watching this. Stop, go watch it, come back, rejoin the conversation. So.
Well, thank you, but you prepped me and said there was going to be some type of negative in there. I didn't hear any.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, your choice of shots and stuff, I think, whatever you're going with leading to your jump scares, I don't think you needed it. So, like I said, maybe that's not a negative, but I think it was strong enough that if the whole thing had been like that, and I get today's audiences, you got to have a payoff. Like, I get it. Or they're going to be like, well, that was ass or whatever. But I don't know. You got to look a little bit deeper than that, folks. Why you watch it in the first place. And I'd be very encouraged with the shots that I just saw in that to see what you do next. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Sorry, Hitchcock said it best. I mean, he said the scare is not in the kill. The scare is in the tension, the build up. He said the kill is just there to make the scare, make the tension have an actual threat at the end. So
Absolutely.
I agree with you 1,000%. I just felt that you do need that final accent of a threat or a jump scare or something just to pay it off. A lot of people, and I have not seen the film, so I'm not going to judge it. A lot of people have made a Skinamarink comparison to my film. Yeah. And they keep saying yours is Skinamarink, but stuff happens. And I'm like, okay.
That's
I haven't seen it yet, but it seems to be a common comparison that I'm getting. So I am curious to see it. So
I mentioned Skinamarink, and I sold my wife on it, and she's not a real deep horror fan. She'll go with some of it, but I said, I'll take you to this. It's kind of like Paranormal Activity. And it was like not at all like Paranormal Activity. It was very abstract and very experimental. And when you leave, it's like a lot of imagery that sticks with you, but you have to kind of put it together in your own mind of what it could have meant. And I see the comparison. I could see where that comes, but you definitely have, like you say, more road markers of things happening through the story. The two things I did want to mention that I did want to credit Mr. Sandman was you do show a tremendous amount of patience with your shots. And you mentioned tension building, and I think that really shows in that movie. Also, in what we were talking about, things on the outside of the frame, it's sometimes in a horror movie, it's the outside of the lens that you don't see. You only see through that lens. And I know it's something like even in Paranormal Activity, I remember the scene where the camera is the oscillating fan, it's going back and forth. And then all of a sudden the ghost is standing, you're just waiting for something to come into view. Yep. And those two aspects, I think, were really well done in that, Mr. Sandman. So I just wanted to see what you thought about those aspects. Did you purposely plan that, or is that just a style that you like?
Well, I'm a massive fan of the shirt and masks that you're wearing, Bob. And the original...
Yeah, we all are. We're all there.
The original Halloween, Carpenter's original Halloween, did a lot of what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
He used a ton of shadow as a character for one of my favorite sayings and one of my producer's most hated sayings, theater of the mind.
Yeah.
Meaning
Yeah.
you get the audience to look into the shadows. There were, Michael Myers could have been in any open door, could have crawled through any open window, could have popped out of any shadow at any time. And you're always looking in that movie into the shadows. And his use of it, and even that one shot where they slowly brought
Mm-hmm.
up the light to expose the mask of Michael Myers behind Jamie Lee Curtis. It I don't think I'm spoiling it for anybody at this point in life,
All
but
right.
but I mean it was that use of shadow, and I know it was a combination of Carpenter and Dean Cundey with his cinematography. It just the theater of the mind is so great because it goes back to what I'm saying earlier. If you can engage an audience instead of just showing them a movie, it will stick with them longer because now they're bringing their own thoughts and fears to the movie. And I've mentioned this in several other podcasts, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but the Michael Myers mask itself is not an angry demon. It's not a laughing clown. It is a blank expression, a white blank expression. So it's like a double blank. We project our own fears onto Michael Myers masks.
Right.
So that's what makes it so effective. And I think anytime you can get an audience to engage on that level, you're going to have a more effective film.
Right,
Hopefully.
Matt. Do you feel with with younger generations, with everyone says attention spans are shorter and all that? Do you feel any pressure in making an artistic product that speaks the way you want to, and not just, hey, I got to throw all the stuff at you? And I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
how do you square that? I guess
It's again, it's a common argument I get into with my producer because Sandman is not his style of movie. He grew up as an 80s slasher fan. He wants gore. He wants over the top. He wants doors slamming and things flying across the room and heads being lopped off and stuff. I said,
right.
Look, I love 80s gore as much as the next person, but it doesn't work in Mr. Sandman. It's really not that
Right.
style of film. So, I'm all for it. Hell, I mean, Friday the 13th Part 6 is one of my favorite horror films. But that doesn't mean that style works in every film. That's all. Like, I wouldn't want to see Friday the 13th Part 6 in The Shining, which is more of a slow
Right.
burn, Like, so I don't feel pressure because I think theater of the mind and hitting someone on a psychological level is something that can't go out of style because it's our psychology. And I think that, again, I apologize because I sometimes repeat myself. Hitting primal chords, the reason they're called primal is it's because not something we can change. Hunger is never going to go out of style. It's not possible. So psychology of fear of the dark is never going to go out of style. It's not possible.
Yeah.
It's a human thing. I'll always go back to Jaws, which is my all-time favorite film. You go in any body of water and you go, let's say, chest deep or even maybe a little lower, and you put your hands 6 inches, a foot down under, you cannot see your hands anymore. So now,
Right.
unless you're in the Caribbean, of course, but
Right.
you're looking around and you're enjoying yourself because it's summertime and you're at the beach, but in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know what's in this water with me. So what? A piece of seaweed's going to hit your leg, and
Right.
you're going to be like, it's a
Right.
fucking
Like
shark. It's
right.
like,
Harkens back to things like the creature from the Black Lagoon, and
yeah, like
and
it's
it's
just
the
there's no way to get around primal and fear the dark and those psychological chords like your daughter likes or that unrelenting force cannot go out of style. So I understand it's a TikTok generation. I love TikTok as
Right.
much as anyone, and
Yeah.
it's a fast moving attention span generation. But my argument will always be is if you hit the right chords, you're going to make it appealing. So to answer your question, no, I do not feel pressure to make a certain style to fit a certain generation. I think if you make it as universal as possible, you have a better chance of making a good film.
Do you feel that Mr. Sandman is your style, would you say? Is that your style of filmmaking?
I'd say it's more my style. But again, I'm such a film fan. So like, if I go back to like a Friday the 13th, I love watching them, but I'm popcorn watching them. I'm having fun watching them. I'm laughing at the bad dialogue. I'm laughing at a head rolling down the stairs or whatever. Yeah. It's just fun. So I love it all, but the films again that stick with me are something like The Exorcist or Halloween or The Shining. They just stick with you more. They really do. But so it's like I love it all for different reasons, But yeah, it's more my style to story first and build off that.
Right. Those slasher movies, they know what they are, and they know that they're no Friday the 13th film ever thought it was taking itself seriously. They know they were there for a wink and a laugh and a fun. And I just saw something today. They're talking about a Pamela Voorhees prequel, possibly.
Oh my god!
So it was like, I don't know about that.
Yep. I think it's called. Isn't it just called Crystal Lake? I think is the working title.
Could be that could be. But yeah, it's like, but those are the ones that are super fun, and you have I have great memories of working at the movie theater when half of those came through the fight, and the audiences were packed, and people were screaming at the top of their lungs, and they were having a good time. Versus when people came out of The Exorcist, they were shaken because it was a primal fear, like you had just illustrated, of religion and taboo and all these things, and evil and invasiveness and child endangerment that that they just couldn't, that wasn't being exploited, is not explored at that time, and that's why it stands out. That's why we talk about it till today. So,
well, you can probably count on two hands the number of horror films that are in what we're talking about, where it grabbed you, it hooked you, and then 40 years later was still talking about it. I couldn't tell you the premise of Jason X. I think that's when he goes to space.
The space one,
yeah, the space one. So that's the extent of my knowledge, even though I've seen it and caught it on cable a billion times. But The Exorcist or Halloween or Texas Chainsaw, all these guys, they were groundbreakers for a reason, because they're sticking with us 40 years later, And is that like that's some good company to be in, Matt? I'm already envious because you're a filmmaker, because at one time I had the bug. We all
did.
Yeah, my writing partner down on the end and stuff, always trying to encourage me we should do this and do that and stuff. It just never happened. We went different ways and stuff. So the fact that you're making it happen is just fantastic to me, and the fact that you're taking the time to talk to us about it. Because like I said, I got those 8-year-old questions, like what did you film that on? There's my 8-year-old question. What was the equipment that you used? I got to know. Things like that, or lighting, or, do you light your set, or do you use natural lighting, or it's like, yeah, that light switch comes on, let's just do that, stuff like that. All the atmosphere of that film, by the way, I really dug, because it's like the lighting, the blues, and then the soft ambers, things like that. That was really, it all contributed for me. So, but that's the question I got.
Dude. Can you touch on some technical things of Mr. Sandman?
Absolutely. Well, get ready to laugh. It was an iPhone.
Yes!
Nice.
That's awesome.
It was a combination of an iPhone and an iPad. There is an app called Filmmaker Pro. I want to say it's $19 a year now. It used to be a one-time fee, but now every app has gone subscription based.
Yeah.
Everybody wants their money, so it gives you control over a lot of things that the simple iPhone, iPad cameras can't do. It gives you control of shutter speed, frame rate,
Oh, nice.
white balance. It's just an infinite number of features that I had to YouTube to learn.
Yeah.
I filmed a short before I filmed Sandman. I filmed a short, a cinematic style short, for my other daughter. It was a 2-minute short because she was a runner at the time. Now she's transferred into basketball, but I wanted to film an inspirational running video for her. So I did, and I used a lot of slow-mos and very dramatic type of shots and stuff. And there was a dual reason. I wanted to make a video for her, and also I wanted to see, can this app really do what I want it to do and give me a cinematic look to things? Because if you film something just with an iPhone, you're filming it video, so that's 30 frames per second. The reason film looks different is because it's 24 frames per second.
Right.
So it has a different motion, and the shutter speed is different than regular video. So film has somewhat of a dreamlike quality. Like when you ghost your hand over something, it's going to have a little bit of a blur over it, whereas video is excessively sharp, and it looks so clean that it doesn't have that grainy film look. So when you combine that with all the features of Final Cut Pro, which is my editing software that I use, which has infinite features and infinite filters and can really help with the looks you want, it's amazing what the average person has the capability of doing these days. It's
That's awesome.
Unreal. And I'm so upset that this came out for me much later in life than way back in my high school days, when again I was running around with that stupid VHS camcorder that I could just not get to look the way I wanted it to look.
Preach on that. So yeah.
So that was the
camcorder. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was the equipment we actually filmed on. As far as the lighting is concerned, we used a combo. I did buy lighting kits to use, and I also bought and I also combined that with some natural what I want to say, room lighting to make it look like a room. So certain hallway shots, it's just the regular lighting, and so on and so forth.
Well, the light on the mom's face in the scene that I was talking about, that's just really like, that's that whole, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I don't want to spoil stuff, but the lighting on that is really accentuates what the character's doing. So there's this vibe.
Well, you guys being from where you are and mentioning the director that you mentioned, you should know exactly where I got.
Yeah, there was a head tilt that was very inspirational head tilt. That was like, oh, yep, I know what he's going for there.
So
that was very much inspired by Raimi.
That's great, though. Do you find yourself, like looking at a scene or a shot or setting it up, or even in your writing phase where you get the visual in your head and you're like, oh, and does it trigger something from what you've seen by a Carpenter, or, Kubrick or something like that, where you're like, not that you're copying, but, just as it forms, you're like, that's cool, because
putting
that's
your own spin on it.
Yeah, you put your spin on it. Yeah. So do you find yourself doing that when you're in your process like this, doing all that, either whether filming or the writing stage?
110%.
Nice.
I am not upset about admitting it, because George Lucas said it best. Everything's been done. Stop worrying about that.
Yep.
Right.
But not everything's been done by you.
Absolutely.
So I took inspiration. There are certain shots in there that are inspired by Kubrick. Some of the dolly shots. There are some Spielberg shots. There are some Poltergeist inspired shots. There's obviously some Raimi stuff in there. There's a ton of Carpenter original Halloween shadow type shots. Yeah, I took my love affair with all these filmmakers and tried to make, since this was my first cinematic style, not counting the short that I did for my daughter, that I absolutely was inspired. And when I was creating a shot list, was inspired by movies that I grew up with from some of my favorite directors.
Dude, the shot of the stairs going up, like, I hate to say it, dude, but like if Michael Myers stepped out of there from the left or the right, or whatever, I wouldn't have been shocked at all. Like I would have been like, yep, I see where this is going. Because that, like, just that shot was really cool. The way all the the shadows are playing and everything and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I better scan because I can't. My heart's going to explode.
Well, that's what creators do, right? They take all of our influences and they just put it in a big blender and it comes out their filter. That's how they,
right. I mean, they were all influenced by Hitchcock
Hitchcock and everybody else.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Fritz Lang, whatever, go way back.
Yeah, Jaws is Jaws is definitely a Hitchcock film through and through. Shots, pacing, tension. That is the Birds, if I've ever seen it.
That Birds is my favorite Hitchcock film. I can't even explain about the Birds. Like there's just maybe primal, to use your words. There's just something about that movie where it's like I get the creeps. I get goosebumps when I watch it, and it's a masterclass in filmmaking and the acting. Like everything about that hits everything. So
that's wonderful because they don't feel the need to. Everybody kind of guesses why it's happening, but nobody says
nope.
Like Night of the Living Dead, we're going to guess why everything's happening, but we don't say it. It's happening. So just deal with it.
It's happening. Just deal with it, right? It's like, there it is, force of nature. What are you going to do? So,
Matt, how do you feel about some of the A24, that kind of psychological stuff, like a Midsummer or Hereditary or?
I loved Hereditary. I absolutely loved it. I'm a huge Kubrick fan, and I could see the Kubrick inspiration in Ari Aster. His, again, slow dollies, which I also used a couple times in Sandman. When I saw what I like to call the shadowy smiles in that film, where you could barely see the old person, but you see a smile and it's in the shadow. Yeah. Oh, that imagery is awesome. Oh my God, it is so good. So it makes me so happy when a modern horror movie just makes me fall in love with it, because that was just, oh my God. So I love that style, and I didn't like Midsommar as much, but I still loved his shooting style. I love Ari Aster's shooting style, and it's very Kubrickian. Let's just make that word up. Those are the only two I've seen from that group. But
what about a Robert Eggers, something like that? Have you caught any of his The Witch or Lighthouse or even Nosferatu? Anything?
The Witch, I liked. The Lighthouse, I just couldn't get into. It didn't. Even I agree that something has to happen in a movie, and I just
that's a tough one, folks. Yeah. That one.
So I couldn't get into. The Witch. I got into a little more. Very subtle. I can understand where some people might not get into it. But The Witch I definitely got into more than The Lighthouse. I have yet to see Nosferatu. Yeah. From what I heard, at very minimum, extremely beautifully shot in production design. So
it looks great. Looks fantastic.
I absolutely would like to see that at some point.
Do you admire directors that will take different spins on a remake, or do you feel it just should be a flat out remake? Do you like things that are altered or artistically changed?
As long as it's effective. I just like good filmmaking. So if you take, Bram Stoker's Dracula, I thought that was extremely effective. I saw it as a teenager, and I wasn't sure how to take it at first, but it was the type of movie that the more I saw, the more I appreciated, and like very much grew on me. So it just depends. It honestly just depends on the film.
Mhm.
Is it a good film or not? That's where I stand on remakes, except for Point Break. How dare you desecrate Point Break with that remake,
Or the Roadhouse.
or Roadhouse? How dare you? Those are movies that should never be touched.
The sacred.
That is hallowed ground and should not be touched.
Oh my God!
Other than that,
Hey, as long as Bob Zemeckis is alive, they will not touch. What did he say? You
Back
will
to
not
the
touch my
Future.
Back to the Future.
Oh
So
gosh.
as they shouldn't.
that's the tough thing. Like yourself, right? You're influenced by a lot of this, and you want to put your own stamp on stuff. But then there are those others because they're governed by a studio, and they need to make another Exorcist because nobody's done it for 20 years. And then, of course, we have to do it. No, you don't have to do it because, yeah, I think it's very rare, unfortunately. I'm just speaking the truth here, that somebody really hits one out of the park. The directors that we were actually talking about, those guys are hitting bangers on everything they do. But there's just something about it that what they're tapping into. Now, will you watch all this stuff that comes out, Matt? Or will you tend to stay away because you got your own thing going on? There are a lot of directors like that. They don't really watch what's going on around them because they don't want to feel
Yeah.
like they're influenced by that.
What's your intake, right? Like, how many movies do you watch? A lot of movies? Do you just pick and choose?
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, my time, my just practical time is limited. Because when I'm not working, I am pick up this one here, drop off this one here, go to
Yep.
this practice,
Yep.
go to this swim meet, go to this basketball game. It's not. I'm at that nonstop phase of life.
Yep.
And he's a filmmaker, folks.
And somehow I squeezed this thing out. It only took
Wow.
me 3 years, but it no, I don't know. I don't actively avoid anything, but because my time is limited, I try to watch stuff that interests me, so I don't waste time on stuff that just doesn't. When high school and college, I watched everything that came across my desk.
Oh, yeah.
But it's only because of time that I have a hard time finding quiet time. And I'll tell you, on the quote unquote weekends, which my weekends are a little different than some others, but on the quote unquote weekends, by the time everybody goes to sleep and I can watch something in peace,
Right.
I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I'm like, well,
That's the
there
trick.
goes that. And I really don't like to start a film, especially if I really want to see it, and then have to stop it halfway through because I'm fading. So I try to watch as much as possible. I'm a bit of I'm one of those fathers that forces the stuff that I like on my kids. So I make them watch.
Welcome to the club, Matt.
I make them watch all the 70s and 80s movies that I grew
Oh
up
my
on.
God, yes.
Now, thankfully, they love them, but that takes up a lot of my time too. So I'm bringing back my quote-unquote classics into their life.
That's great. That is great.
So, it's
You got to get that in there somewhere. Like, you got to at least, you did your part. You got to pass that on somewhere, to say, hey, at least I showed you this, because we have all been down that road. And we all complain because they just don't, our kids are not grabbing this stuff like we did. They're just not. Bob had a really poignant thing he said a couple ones back where he's like, he just had this kind of come to Jesus moment where he's like, are we that last generation? Like, we're just holding on. We're trying to show our kids the horror that we grew up with, but they're just not doing it. They got the phones, and luckily maybe we find one. Like my kid in Halloween. I found one. Okay. They don't do anything else, but she loves that Halloween. And luckily, folks, she loves Halloween too. Like she really digs that one.
I love Halloween too.
Yeah,
I do.
do
It's
too.
an underrated
Yeah.
one. So I think it should all be one movie, and they could edit a lot down, but
Do like
anyway.
a Godfather on it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I add H2O to that trilogy and make it the perfect package?
Oh, there you go.
I would love. That's my personal preference.
Nice. Am I allowed to ask this on there? How old are you, Matt?
I will be at the end of March. I will be turning the big 50.
All right, yeah,
No,
you are
yeah, you're not
right.
too far.
You're right in the
You're-
channel. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Generation X, baby.
yeah,
you go.
there we are. So all right, see, yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. We could,
We're
yeah,
speaking the same language.
Yeah, I grew up on the 70s and 80s movie, which I will still, and it's something I'll fight to the death over. The golden age of film.
absolutely, absolutely. Our very first podcast was, what was it, guys? 1984.
Yeah.
Is it the best year of film ever?
Ooh.
Like it just.
Karate Kid, Temple
Oh
of
my God,
Doom,
Temple of Doom. Yeah,
Ghostbusters,
Was it Beverly Hills Cop? Was that in
Beverly
there?
Hills Cop.
Yeah, and it was just a crazy year of like.
My first day at the movie theater, I started before these guys. I was their opening weekend of Gremlins.
Oh, Gremlins. Yeah.
Also 84.
Yeah, and then in the theater playing, we had The Last Starfighter, Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, and I don't know if Star Trek 2 had left or by then or not, but it was.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wasn't Red? I think Red Dawn was 84 also.
Oh, that came to our theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, how do you take your media? I mean, are you a streaming guy, a physical media? Do you do any of that? How do you view that whole debate?
Both. I'm viewing through streaming, unless it's something I really want to see, and then I will make a trip to the theater. And if I used to be physical media crazy, and then I was like, I'm like, okay, am I ever gonna watch this movie again? Am I ever going to watch that movie again?
Right.
So now I boiled it a little down, still hundreds of titles, to just the things I absolutely love. So if I love it, I will buy it. Now, I'm about to make Mark extremely proud because my collection is filled with all the DC animated featured.
Yes. Yes.
Filled.
Yes. The one thing that whatever branch that was got right, because they sure as shit didn't do it for the movies. So
Yes.
the animated line, top notch, man.
If they just gave Bruce Timm the keys to all the live action.
Oh my God. If Bruce Timm is the guy that knows what he's doing, Jesus, you think there's an executive somewhere be like, let me, like the Alan Ladd Jr. of the past that gave Lucas he's like, I believe in Star Wars. Like that's what every studio needs.
Yes.
To be like, let me put the keys in that guy's hands to do it.
What's my Halloween solution, guys? You guys remember that one? We turned it into a streaming series, and it's the tales from like the case file of Dr. Loomis.
Oh God, yeah, that's
and
right.
All his cases from Haddonfield Sanitarium.
Absolutely, man.
Smith Grove.
Michael Myers is kind of
Grove,
always he's always in the background. He's never the case you're going to stop on, but you might walk past his cell one day, or
I'd watch it.
I'd
watch that.
Yeah.
Like I don't get it.
I would watch it.
I guess as we wind down, Matt, we're just kind of wondering, do you have anything in your mind that you're thinking for the future of Acres Films, or anything on the back burner?
Only general concepts at this point. A lot's going to depend on the success of Mr. Sandman. Not so much the financial success, because it's hard to make one title, especially a short title, turn that big of a profit. But I think more like the word of mouth and reputation, so that hopefully I can put together a successful Indiegogo campaign to make something a little bigger and broader, like the two possible concepts that I have in my head at the moment. So nothing definitive, but just general concepts. And it's, we'll see. We'll see how Mr. Sandman plays out. If it propels me to that next level, if not, I'll have to adjust and pivot and make something more within my financial capabilities, but hopefully as good or better.
Could you see Mr. Sandman growing into a larger feature?
Not so much Mr. Sandman, because I don't think there's a lot more to tell with that
What
story.
if you put Dr. Loomis in?
Jesus. Wow.
I'm just joking.
Could I?
Wow.
Are there some nighttime things that I didn't hit on? But I think the length. I didn't set out to make a certain length with Mr. Sandman. I said, let me film it and let it organically be what it's going to be without being too long or too short. And whatever organically fits in there, that's what we'll release. And that's what. And not counting the post credits interviews, that's what it became. It became a 36-minute film, and I don't think there's a lot I would change.
Yeah, I have an expression. There's no fat on that.
Yes,
Like it is the way it is, folks. If you get a chance to see it, there's no fat. Everything's either your heart's gonna palpitate, or or it's not for you, and you're gonna go do something else. But I'm telling you, if you just got to stick with it, because all the short little parts in there pay off. That's the way I say it. So, very good though. I think it was a very good film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Exciting that it's reached a streaming audience, because streaming is to this generation what video stores were to the previous generation, to what drive-ins and movie theaters were to the generation before that. So it's how people are consuming their media these days.
So at the video stores, we all peeked behind that curtain, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I worked at a video store after the theater.
Bob and I worked at a video store for a short time.
For a
We
short
didn't have a
period.
curtain room. I don't think ours
That's
had a
the
curtain
other
room.
primal terror.
Oh, we didn't tell you about it. We didn't tell you about it, Mark. There was definitely the blue cards.
It kept me away from that. Where's Mark at? I don't know. The video stores for us folks was also a way to watch. I never saw, or maybe I was a little too young, like Slumber Party Massacre or whatever. But by the time the videotapes came out, you could just rent all the whatever schlocky B horror movie that you wanted to, and be like, that was horrible, but that girl got killed really cool or whatever. That is. Way to go, Jim. That is exactly what that is for nowadays, for the streaming services. I was shocked because I was like, I had to go back through our chat. Where am I going to watch Matt's Filmat stuff? And I was like, oh, crap, it's on TUBI, because TUBI is my nemesis, by the way.
You are the TUBI king.
Yeah, oh my God. And you go down that rabbit hole, folks. I could be going down the rabbit hole and end up not watching a film. I've spent 2 hours going down that rabbit hole.
Well, that's what I was going to say about the video store. I mean, you probably browsed at a video store about a quarter of the time you browse on your phone.
And somebody's all in the back hollering at you, be like, "Can't just pick one?" So
Right.
it's like, that's what I do at Tubi. So I was impressed that I was like, "Oh, this is on Tubi. That's kind of cool. I really
It's a
like
convenience
that."
factor.
So,
yeah.
So, given what you do, Matt, okay, and you get the budget you want. They sign the check over. You get whatever you want, casting, whoever. What type of film are you making? Are you sticking with horror? Do you got some thrillers in mind? Is there that deep-seated noir movie in the background? Unlimited budget. I can't say unlimited, but you get your Hollywood budget. What are you making?
You got your shot.
Yep.
I have a Superman screenplay ready to go. And
That's awesome.
I have it ready to go.
Yes.
I have a Batman screenplay ready to go. But if gun to my head, I had to make one, it would be Superman.
Nice.
Wow.
Are you listening, James? Okay. Get in touch with Matt over here. Let's find out
I
something.
think we got to the heart of Matt here, the comic stuff.
I am.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I love it all. I really do. I mean, I can watch horror. I can watch superhero films. Put me in front of Rocky, a marathon. I'm as happy as can be. I'll I'll just as quickly pop on Good Will Hunting. I love it.
Yeah.
Comedy, oh God, you name it. I love it. I just love film. I do.
You're a cinephile like all of us. I mean, it's you could tell just by talking to you after 10 minutes. So
Yeah, I can't help it. I get wrapped up and I get into the granular because I love analyzing it too.
oh boy.
Actually, I do have a question for you guys, or it's sort of a multi-part question. For those who have seen the challenge, do you have a favorite part and why?
I know Jim and I are the two that saw it. So
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to yet. But
That's
I'm
okay. I'm going to ask the same thing about Mr. Sandman.
okay, and we'll hit Mark up on that one.
I already know mine. Watch out.
Well, in the challenge, I really liked the bridal ghost. I like when we first see her. That's kind of a very subtle, like
In the background?
It's, yes, at
Yeah.
the end of the hall, and then she's not there for the because I watch it. I've seen 1,000 horror movies. I'm going, okay, when they're going to do a double pan back, she's going to be standing right there next to
Yeah,
her.
I was waiting for that.
But she wasn't, which is great because you took the time to build the suspense. So, and I like that I only see enough of her. I never see too much of her.
Love
I'd have to say I guess my favorite part was when you kicked into the old Vitrola there. Anytime you got creepy old music, and you had Swan Lake was in Mr. Sandman.
Yep.
The music box, which is another creepy thing that always hits, because anytime you get creepy old music, it's like something's not right here.
Yep.
So that was effective. I really enjoyed that part.
Okay, so the phonograph scene. Okay, great. Now the same question for Mr. Sandman.
Mr. Sandman. Mark, you had extra time to think. You want to go first?
Well, I love certain imagery. So there's two things that I really. One's an overall, the bed sheet type thing.
Okay.
That fucks me up. Like that's a childhood thing in me reliving watching that, something like that. So when they're completely covered up, I can't breathe. So when you have like, oh my God, she's going to take that off. Oh my God, is something going to be there and stuff? And then it's not. It's just the darkness. I don't know if I'm relieved. I'm fucked up even more. But so in a horror thing, especially for that film, I loved that. I was like, okay, all right, breathe. But then the opposite side of that, my favorite scene is the mom. So that imagery, and I just love it. I don't know if it's because of the scare, because that's so over the top. Like, what adult is going to see that and stand there like regular? Like, who's not going to run, scream, shit their pants? Like, I couldn't. Like, that fucks me up. My wife always asks me, well, what if you saw that at the end of the house? I'm like, we burn the house and leave, of course. Like, I can't do that, And you mentioned Lights Out, dude. I loved the short film of that, not the film but good for him that it did that.
Yes.
But that short film, and your film gave me those vibes of Lights Out, so to speak. So even if you didn't intend that, dog, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, I'm getting those vibes. So those are my two, right there.
I'll take that compliment.
Yeah, dude. Oh, good job.
I did like the scene when she's in the bed and seeing the dark like pile of clothes or whatever it was supposed to be.
Oh my God.
Because I see that all the time at home, and I'm like, I just can't, I'm
Clean that up. I can't have that anymore.
I'm kind of the night owl in my house. I'm always the one, cleaning things up, turning lights off, shutting doors, whatever, locking up. And if I see something in the corner or whatever, it's just like, I didn't put that there.
It's subtly that your wife telling you to pick your stuff up. Right?
Yeah, it's probably all my dirty laundry.
Yeah, man got Bob all fucked up, man. I can't look at those clothes anymore.
There were a couple shots that's kind of stuck with me, and they weren't super like in your face shots. There was the shot you used of your daughter pulling her feet up underneath the covers. I thought was very effective. There's another shot that is the reverse condensation on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, oh, that's a very clever way of showing us that we're not where we think we are.
I might have to watch that again.
I did really enjoy, of course, the mother's makeup and all the things that called back to. I also liked that the Mr. Sandman character himself, that he wasn't so rigidly defined. He was very still kind of amorphous, like you didn't really get a sharp
Yes.
You didn't get a sharp focus on his face. He was still kind of that imagery. And then, like Bob and, Mark were talking about the clothes, that kind of stand up. That felt very Mr. Barlow coming in the window with the.
That's what I thought of. That rose up. I was like,
That's funny.
Yep.
Yeah, there were just lots of little things. And any family that watches George Méliès and listens to Dance Macabre, I just want to hang out with them. So I can tell that they both have good taste and they are not afraid of public domain. So.
I do have a criticism.
Fire away.
No, that's all for today, folks.
It's because if I had a grandma like that,
oh my gosh,
the one thing she tells me, I'd be like, thanks, grandma. I'm traumatized for the rest of my life.
I almost thought that Zoe, the character, the young girl character, the main character, I was almost thinking, like, did she go to sleep and this is all like in her head? I was like starting to think with the grandma telling that story because it's so like odd, you're just like, what is grandma saying?
There's a dreamlike quality to it.
Yeah.
That's
what it says.
I kind of intentionally made some of it a little ambiguous for that. What's a dream? What's not? And I just like leaving a little bit open to interpretation for the audience.
Thank you. I don't need everything explained to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
We're all fans of that.
It's happening because it's happening. Deal with it.
So we all agree that the midichlorians were a mistake and the Force should have been left as a mystical.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We have to sign off now. You can't invoke Star Wars with this guy.
It was nice having you for the last time, Matt.
Yeah. Well, okay, folks. So that's Matt, and we won't see him anymore.
We did one Star Wars podcast just about the history of when we were kids. If you want to check it out on our channel, it was what it meant to us. But then we cut it off at like Empire. It was like we can't talk about anything after that.
Yeah.
Bob had a question that I don't know if he asked or you guys skirted around it. So Matt, if you had to pick one all-time favorite horror, I guess we'll just say that, or if you just want to throw out your all-time favorite film, I'm kind of curious. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it earlier. Jaws is my favorite film of all time. Okay. It is a horror, make no mistake. But if I were to just categorize just horror, it always comes down to The Exorcist for me.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Just pure horror, with The Shining just a hair behind.
Nice.
We may have to recruit you as the fourth member of the Phantom Outpost.
Oh my god, dude!
Bring
These
me
are all the movies up our alley.
Dude, find some time, man. God,
take me off
on more.
No, I'd be honored to join you guys again if it's just movie talk and.
Oh my god! Yeah, we'll definitely keep you on the list and see if you ever have time and are interested in a topic. We'll grab you.
You're a breath of fresh air right now.
Yeah,
so we're pretty focused for this thing. So
you fit right into this pod. I'll tell you that.
That's great.
Well, I guess we shouldn't keep you too long. We've already kept you long enough, I guess. So
sorry about that.
Not at all. I love it.
Hey, all the success for you. Yeah.
No, thank you
all
guys.
All the success in the world, man.
I'm so glad you enjoyed the films. I really did.
Yeah, keep at it, man.
Yeah, looking forward to what comes next.
And for viewers and listeners, you can check Matt's stuff out on TUBI for Mr. Sandman, and some of his other films are at least the challenge is on your YouTube channel, right? For Acres Films.
Correct.
And I guess that's all the plugs I have, right? Any other plugs?
No, that's it.
Check you out on social media.
Yeah.
Everything's pretty much under Acres Films. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and the new app Slasher. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Oh, no.
No, I never heard of that.
It's a horror fan social media.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Look at Bob's
Bye,
face.
Bob.
Uh-oh.
Bye, Bob.
There it is.
That's great.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I guess that's it for tonight. We really appreciate Matt Schmidt coming on with us today. And
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys.
Yeah, it was
This
a lot of
great.
fun. So
and for anyone else interested in Three Schlubs here, check us out on our Phantom Outpost, our Instagram and Facebook, and join our conversation when we talk more about movies and stuff and all that fun stuff. So we really appreciate you coming on. And we'll see you next time, right, everybody?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
See you next time on the Phantom Outpost. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.